All right, welcome to the fifth screencast for Chapter 10. Chapter 10 has been all about monopoly. In the last screencast, we looked at some of the problems with monopoly industries. In this screencast, we're going to look at some of the solutions. All right. So one of the first ways in which monopolies are addressed are by trying to take the monopoly and get the benefits of competition by splitting up the large monopoly into smaller companies. This was done with AT&T in 1982, Standard Oil in 1911. In 1890, the Sherman Act was passed, which gave the government the ability to go in and investigate companies and the power to break them up if they were found to be trying to become monopolies. Another way to try to solve the problem of one firm having monopoly power is to reduce trade barriers, allow competitively priced goods to be transported across borders, across state borders. There are still certain restrictions on certain types of goods going across state lines, even in the U.S. In my lifetime, I've seen banking go from where you could only have a bank within a state to now we have national level banks. So different reducing trade barriers makes competition usually more robust and makes it a lot harder for monopolists to exist. Another is to just go in and regulate the price. All right, maybe we don't want to break up a large firm because it's a natural monopoly, meaning that in this particular firm, being big is a big cost advantage. And so they have that increasing returns to scale. And so in those sorts of industries, that's good because they have low average total cost. That's good for the consumers. But the monopoly also still wants to restrict quantity and charge a higher price. So how could we possibly get the good parts of the monopoly, the long run average total cost, but also preventing them from abusing market power? So here's what that solution will look like here on a graph. So here's the market demand curve. Here's the market marginal revenue curve. And here we see this is the average total cost faced in this industry. So the firm, it keeps getting bigger and bigger, and the average total cost keeps falling. All right. So here we have the marginal cost curve that would be in a competitive market. All right. So the monopolist sets the quantity at the point where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. This is always true for the firms we've been talking about. Competitive firms set quantity where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Our monopolist does the same thing. What differs here is the monopolist sets the price by then going up to the demand curve and saying, what's the highest price I can charge given that I want to sell that much? What will the market bear? All right. So notice at this quantity, the monopolist cost is here at the average total cost curve. So this is the monopolist profit without any regulation. Okay. Here is the regulated quantity and the regulated price for the firm. So often when governments come in and try to regulate the price in a monopoly industry, one of the early ideas was, well, let's make price equal marginal cost. That's what happens in a competitive market. So let's do that for the monopoly firm and say price, you have to set your price at your marginal cost. All right. Well, notice what happens in this monopolist case is if they set quantity where price equals marginal cost, the firm's monopoly cost might be above the price that they're charging, and that might result in a loss, all right, with regulation. So simple marginal cost pricing doesn't always work as a way to address the natural monopoly because this monopolist will actually now be operating at a loss and will actually shut down. And all of those benefits that we wanted from this natural monopoly, right, having the low average total cost, would never be realized. All right. So marginal cost pricing is where price equals marginal cost. The monopolist will experience a loss because marginal cost is less than average total cost. So price is less than average total cost. This results in losses. One of the solutions to doing marginal cost pricing, if the government decides it's the best way to go forward, is to then give a subsidy back to the firm. All right. Set price at average total cost and the price at the marginal level of output, and then the government will subsidize the firm for the losses. Government ownership is also another approach that's less and less popular in the U.S. In terms of addressing this issue, where you'd be basically setting up a large monopoly to operate at a loss in order to pass that on to consumers. All right. What's some of the problems with government intervention in some of these markets? Well, there's something that's known as government failure. All right. Government intervention can eliminate the profit motive and the necessity for innovation and for firms to improve efficiency. Government employees, if it's a government-run monopoly, are rarely fired, regardless of their performance. In the free market, firms under marginal cost pricing have no incentive to lower their cost. Often this is better than government intervention and changing incentives for a firm. So we live in a world of second best in these industries where there's increasing returns to scale. One big firm is ideal, but it has some trade-offs in terms of lower quantity, higher prices. If the government comes in and tries to fix that problem by regulating prices or doing other things to the monopolist, then there are also costs to those sorts of things. So it's one of these world of second best, where we kind of have to just weigh the pros and cons of each individual situation. So conclusion for monopolies: competitive markets generally bring about welfare-enhancing outcomes for society. Monopolies often do the opposite. Governments often then seek to limit monopoly outcomes by promoting competitive markets as much as possible, right? Perfectly competitive markets and monopoly are market structures at opposite extremes. In the real world, activity takes places in between these two extremes. All right, that's it.